Former President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines is now at the ICC headquarters in The Hague, Netherlands, for an allegedly crime he has committed against humanity. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's road to The Hague began with his dramatic arrest in the Philippines, following an international warrant issued by the International Criminal Court, ICC. After years of investigation into alleged crimes against humanity related to his controversial war on drugs, Duterte was taken into custody by Philippine authorities amid a highly charged political atmosphere. His arrest was met with mixed reactions. His supporters decried it as a politically motivated move, while his critics hailed it as long overdue justice. The international community closely monitored the situation, as the Philippines, which had previously withdrawn from the ICC, faced a legal and diplomatic crossroads. Following his detention, Duterte was placed under heavy security as preparations were made for his transfer to The Hague. Despite attempts by his legal team to challenge the warrant and prevent his extradition, the Philippine government ultimately complied with international legal obligations. Protests erupted both in support of and against Duterte, highlighting the deep divisions in Philippine society. The former leader, who once dismissed the ICC's authority, now found himself at the center of its judicial process. As he was escorted onto a secured flight bound for the Netherlands, the world watched, eager to see how one of the most polarizing figures in modern Philippine history would answer to the charges against him. Now, at the ICC headquarters in The Hague, Duterte faces a tribunal that seeks to determine his accountability for thousands of extrajudicial killings under his administration. His arrival has reignited debates on sovereignty, human rights, and international justice as his legal team prepares to argue against the charges. Meanwhile, victims' families and human rights organizations push for a conviction, hoping that the case will set a precedent for accountability among world leaders. As the trial begins, Duterte, once a fiery and defiant leader, now sits in the defendant's chair, confronting the weight of international law. Rodrigo Duterte was born on March 28, 1945, in Masin, southern Leyte, to a political family that later moved to Davao in Mindanao. His father, Vicente Duterte, was a lawyer and politician who served as governor of the then undivided Davao province, while his mother, Soledad Duterte, was a school teacher and a known social activist. Growing up in a household deeply involved in governance and community affairs, Duterte was exposed to politics from an early age. However, he was also known for being a rebellious child, often getting into trouble during his school years. His childhood was marked by both privilege and discipline, as his parents instilled in him strong values while also ensuring he was aware of the struggles of ordinary Filipinos. Duterte pursued his education in Davao and Manila, completing his high school at the Holy Cross College of Digos. Like some other boys his age, he is expelled from other schools due to disciplinary issues. He then attended Lyceum of the Philippines University in Manila, where he earned a degree in political science in 1968. Following his undergraduate studies, he enrolled in San Beda College of Law and obtained his law degree in 1972. Shortly after, he passed the bar exam and began his career in the justice system, working as a prosecutor in Davao City. His experience in law enforcement and the judicial system shaped his tough stance on crime and his later policies as a politician. His years as a prosecutor gave him first-hand experience dealing with criminals, which would later influence his controversial approach to governance. Duterte's political career took off when he became vice mayor of Davao City in 1986, following the People Power Revolution. He later served as mayor for over 2 decades, earning a reputation as a strong-willed leader who transformed Davao from a crime-ridden city into one of the safest urban centers in the country. He was known for his iron-fisted rule, implementing strict policies on crime and discipline. In 2016, he was elected as the 16th President of the Philippines, bringing his tough, anti-crime stance to the national stage. On the personal side, Duterte was married to Elizabeth Zimmerman, with whom he had 3 children, including Sara Duterte, who later became Davao City Mayor and Vice President of the Philippines. He also had a long-term partner, Hanilet Avancenia, with whom he shares a daughter, Kitty Duterte. His family, especially his children, continues to play a significant role in Philippine politics, carrying on his political influence even after his presidency. As former President Rodrigo Duterte faces trial at the ICC in The Hague, his family and supporters have mobilized in a bid to defend him both legally and politically. His children, including Davao City Mayor Sebastian Duterte and Vice President Sara Duterte, have been vocal in condemning what they call an unjust and politically motivated case. They have engaged legal experts to challenge the ICC's jurisdiction, arguing that the Philippines is no longer a member of the court and that Duterte should be tried under Philippine laws. At the same time, they have rallied allies in government and the private sector to exert pressure on international bodies, seeking diplomatic solutions that could lead to his release or a dismissal of charges. Supporters of Duterte, including former government officials, political allies, and grassroots organizations, have launched nationwide protests and online campaigns to demonstrate their unwavering loyalty. Rallies have been held across key cities, with slogans denouncing foreign intervention and insisting that Duterte's war on drugs was necessary for the safety of the nation. Social media platforms have become battlegrounds for narratives, as pro-Duterte groups flood timelines with messages of support, while critics counter with calls for justice. Some lawmakers have even proposed resolutions urging the government to reject the ICC proceedings, arguing that it undermines Philippine sovereignty. Meanwhile, Duterte's legal team is actively working on strategies to either delay the proceedings or challenge the admissibility of evidence presented against him. They have called on witnesses who could testify in his favor, including former police and military officials who played key roles in the drug war. In an effort to gain public sympathy, his allies have painted him as a leader who prioritized national security over international approval. As the legal battle unfolds, Duterte's family and supporters remain steadfast, hoping to turn the tide in his favor and prevent a conviction that could reshape the country's political landscape. The allegations against former President Rodrigo Duterte stem from his controversial war on drugs, which allegedly led to thousands of deaths, including those of suspected drug lords, low-level drug users, and reportedly innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. While Duterte and his supporters argue that his actions were necessary to rid the country of illegal drugs and criminality, human rights organizations and international bodies have condemned the campaign for its brutal methods and disregard for due process. The extrajudicial killings linked to law enforcement operations and vigilante groups have raised serious concerns about human rights violations, prompting the ICC's investigation into possible crimes against humanity. Supporters of Duterte maintain that his aggressive approach was effective in reducing crime and drug-related violence, portraying him as a leader who prioritized national security over political correctness. However, critics argue that his policies fostered a culture of impunity, where law enforcement operated without accountability, leading to the deaths of innocent individuals wrongly accused or caught in violent crackdowns. The debate over whether Duterte's drug war was a necessary evil or a grave injustice continues to polarize the nation, but his trial at the ICC signals a growing international consensus that state leaders must be held accountable when their policies result in widespread human rights abuses. The ongoing trial of former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte at the International Criminal Court, ICC, has been met with controversy, not just politically, but also within the ICC itself. A critical jurisdictional debate has emerged with at least two judges, Chief Judge Mark Perrin de Brishambo and Judge Gocha Lord Kipanidze, arguing that the ICC does not have the legal authority to proceed with the case. Their position is based on the fact that the Philippines formally withdrew from the Rome Statute in 2019, which they claim removes the country from the ICC's jurisdiction. This argument suggests that since the Philippines is no longer a state party to the ICC, any alleged crimes committed after the withdrawal should fall outside the court's authority, rendering the case against Duterte invalid. Despite this argument, a narrow majority of 3 ICC judges ruled in favor of continuing the investigation and trial, asserting that the withdrawal does not exempt Duterte from accountability for crimes allegedly committed while the Philippines was still a member. The majority held that the ICC retains jurisdiction over crimes that occurred before the withdrawal took effect, as the case was already under preliminary examination at the time. This decision has created a deep division within the court itself, with legal experts and political analysts debating whether the ICC's ruling sets a precedent for handling cases involving countries that have chosen to exit the Rome Statute. The close 3-2 vote highlights the complexity of the issue and suggests that Duterte's legal team may still have room to challenge the ICC's authority. The chances of Duterte's family and supporters successfully pressuring the ICC to release him back to the Philippines remain uncertain but challenging. While rallies and protests can demonstrate public support for Duterte, they are unlikely to influence the ICC, which operates independently of political and public sentiment. The court's decisions are based on legal arguments, evidence, and established international law, rather than political demonstrations. However, Duterte's legal team could use these rallies as part of their defense strategy, arguing that he still has significant public backing and that the case against him is politically motivated. Additionally, if the Philippine government takes an official stance rejecting the ICC's authority, this could add weight to the argument that Duterte should be tried under domestic law instead. His legal team has already been actively challenging the ICC's jurisdiction, a strategy that could be their strongest defense. Given the split decision among ICC judges, Duterte's lawyers may push for a reconsideration of the court's authority over the case. They could also seek diplomatic interventions from allied countries or use international legal mechanisms to delay proceedings. However, while these legal maneuvers might slow the process, they do not guarantee Duterte's release. The ICC has shown in past cases that it is willing to proceed with trials despite external pressures, especially when serious human rights violations are alleged. As for the legal capabilities of Duterte's defense team, they are composed of experienced lawyers, including those with backgrounds in international law and human rights cases. While they are well-equipped to argue legal technicalities such as jurisdiction and admissibility of evidence, their challenge lies in countering the substantial documentation and testimonies collected by human rights organizations, victims' families, and investigators. If the ICC trial moves forward, his defense will need to provide compelling counter-arguments and possibly introduce alternative narratives regarding the drug war's impact. While they may be capable of defending him in court, the final decision will rest on the strength of the prosecution's evidence versus the effectiveness of their legal counter-arguments. According to the SWS survey commissioned by Stratbase, conducted from February 15th to 19th, 51% of the respondents said Duterte should answer for the killings related to his war on drugs. On the other hand, 25% disagreed, 14% were undecided, and 10% said they didn't know enough to give an opinion. The recent Social Weather Stations (SWS) survey, commissioned by Stratbase, highlights a significant divide in public opinion regarding former President Rodrigo Duterte's accountability for extrajudicial killings linked to his war on drugs. With 51% of respondents believing that Duterte should be held responsible, the survey indicates that more than half of Filipinos recognize the need for legal action or justice for the thousands of deaths that occurred under his administration. This finding reflects growing concerns over human rights violations and the rule of law, particularly as international bodies like the ICC continue to investigate the case. However, the 25% who disagreed, alongside the 14% undecided and 10% unsure, suggest that a substantial portion of the population remains either supportive of Duterte's policies or uncertain about the legal and moral implications of his campaign against illegal drugs. The survey results also underscore the deep political polarization in the country. While Duterte's supporters argue that his drug war was necessary to restore law and order, critics emphasize the lack of due process and the targeting of marginalized communities. The numbers suggest that while there is a strong call for accountability, Duterte still retains a loyal base that either dismisses the allegations or believes he should not be prosecuted. This division is likely to play a crucial role in shaping political discourse, particularly as the Marcos administration navigates its position on Duterte's trial. The findings indicate that public opinion could influence how the government responds to international legal pressures, as well as the broader conversation on human rights and governance in the Philippines. The ongoing trial of former President Rodrigo Duterte at the ICC marks a pivotal moment in Philippine history, testing the nation's commitment to justice, sovereignty, and international law. His arrest and transfer to The Hague have deepened political divisions, with his family and supporters fighting to discredit the case, while human rights advocates push for accountability. Meanwhile, the Marcos administration remains caught between honoring its alliance with the Duterte camp and maintaining diplomatic credibility on the global stage. As the proceedings continue, the world watches closely to see whether this case will set a precedent for holding powerful leaders accountable for alleged human rights violations. Regardless of the outcome, Duterte's trial has already reshaped the political landscape of the Philippines. It has reignited debates about the country's role in the international justice system and the balance between national sovereignty and global accountability. Whether he is convicted or acquitted, this moment in history will serve as a reminder of the far-reaching consequences of leadership decisions, particularly when they involve human rights and the rule of law. The trial's conclusion will not only define Duterte's legacy, but also influence how future leaders approach governance, justice, and international cooperation. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to click that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you'll always be in the loop when we release new content. Thanks for watching.